welcome back to True Print for Life. I'm your host, Christina Vera.
And I'm your co-host, Maylin Sambois.
So welcome back. Today, I'm really, really excited. But then it's also like one of those uncomfortable, awkward conversations to have. But I guess I'm excited because I think it's all about growth. And I think that anytime you start to really evaluate who you are or who you're becoming or how you want to show up to the world every single day, it's a journey, and you should be excited about that. Now that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have challenges kind of in that process, but it's important that as you're building out essentially like all these things you want or how you want to live or the career you want to have, that you take the time to think about your relationships. And we're not just talking about like as far as like who you're dating, who you're married, like all aspects of the relationships that you interact with on a day-to-day. Now we know relationships, they evolve and change over time, and sometimes for the better and sometimes not. And
they're not better.
Yeah, they're not better, and they're actually really draining and
horrible.
And they're horrible, right? So, sometimes at the beginning of the year, people tend to have this New Year's resolution type of thing, but we kind of encourage that you don't have to wait to the new year.
Don't bring them to the new year.
Yeah, don't bring nothing negative into no new year. But just you kind of choose when you think this is the time you want to be kind of thinking about these things. I personally feel like it's just something you should be doing at least quarterly at minimum, but really thinking about taking some time to do a relationship inventory to remember what's important in life, what's important with the friends and the family and the loved ones that you have, because at the end of the day, that's truly all that really matters. And so we wanted to talk a little bit today about 4 ways to really evaluate your relationships. And this is actually guided from some best practices that we found online, but also part of it is just some of our own experiences of how we have navigated in this sometimes not so comfortable space of just really looking at the order of importance as it relates to our relationships.
Yep. And I think one of the best ways is you can list like your top 10 relationships in order for importance, right? So my most important relationship, number 1, who is that? Is it you? Like it should be you. Mm-hmm. Your number 1 most important relationship should be with yourself, which I think sometimes we put that last. Second, is it your mom? Is it your spouse? Is it your best friend? Like who is it? Is it your kids? So you kind of have to think about what's important to you because everybody's different. Who you have in your life is different. Mm-hmm. So maybe take a piece of paper, a journal, and write down like your 1 to 10 and number them. Like what are the most important, starting with number 1 all the way to the least important. Still important, but like the least important. And kind of start figuring out like why are they important, right? Like there's things that what makes them important, because sometimes we think relationships are important, but what makes them important,
right? And it might really reveal to you, if someone really is like, if you're listing somebody that's like top 3 but you haven't spoke to them in a while, I think it's one of those things that also really helps you reveal some areas of improvement, because if they're in your top 10 but you haven't spoken to them in 6 months, then you might be losing touch with people you really care about or that people that really mean a lot to you.
Yeah. And that brings us to the next point, which is, okay, so now talk about how much time you spend with those people, right? Mm-hmm. So like they're important to you. And I think on the side of that, I will put how much time am I spending on a monthly, daily, weekly, yearly basis with them. Mm-hmm. I think that the next set of questions that you should ask yourself, the next important list, there's 4 ways. The second way is maybe list 1 to 10 and who are the people you're spending the most time with. Because sometimes we say the most important person for me is this, but then the time that you're spending with other people is actually what's showing, right? Your actions are showing who's more important to you based on the amount of time that you're spending with them. So you probably want to number that again, 1 to 10. Mm-hmm. What are the top 10 people that you're spending the most of your time with, and how much time is that?
Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate, you're going to want to create a list of the top 10 relationships in order of importance. Mm-hmm. And then you want to create a separate list, top 10 relationships in order of time spent each week. So as Maylin mentioned, you might have 10 people that are really, really important to you. But then when you break down the people that you spend the most time with, you might see a real disconnection there.
Yeah, like a total different list.
Yeah,
it may say a totally different
it
list.
could vary because if you think about it, you're thinking about like coworkers, you're thinking about your boss, because we spend a lot of our days sometimes working with people, or having to be on certain calls. But and you might also be listing like your parents or your significant other. So it's really helping you to better understand who am I spending most of my time with, and really being able to evaluate if these people weren't on your original list, and are these situations or relationships that you can start to then kind of re-navigate. If you're finding that you're spending time with a lot of negative people or people who are not important to you, then how do we start making room on that list for people who are important to you?
Yeah. Because I think, and then how they are in attitude, right? Because sometimes you are in a space of your life because the people that you're hanging around with are kind of like sharing that energy with you. And that kind of like just really like attaches to you.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling a little down and depressed and anxious or even angry, whatever it is, like who are you spending time with?
Yeah.
Right? Like where is this coming from? I think that's important.
I agree. And I think it's one of those things that because we are sometimes always so on the go, we really, how often do we really just sit down and think about where am I spending my time and who am I spending my time with? And as Maylin just mentioned, it's like, do I feel a certain type of way, or certain things not happening the way I want them to happen because I'm spending my time kind of in the wrong circles? Or maybe you're right on track. So I don't want to come from just a negative standpoint.
Right.
Like maybe you're like, no, I'm rocking. My first list looks pretty close to my second list. Well, I would encourage you to take it a step further in that case, or even in both cases. So when you list your 10 most important people in your life, we would encourage you to describe the basis of your relationship, right? Because sometimes in our minds, we might think people are good for us. Like, no, this is my best friend of 30 years, what have you. But if you take the time to really think about what is the basis of that relationship, and what I mean by that is, if you guys have been friends for 20 plus years, or maybe it's your spouse or whomever, start thinking through like, what are we mostly engaging about? Like, are we getting together to do positive, uplifting things? Is it because we have a common interest? Like Maylin and I work together. So naturally, I think our friendship continued to evolve because we were building something.
Right.
So I would talk to Maylin more than I would talk to my family most of the time. It was just be like, I literally knew I was talking to Maylin a few times a day. And it's been like that 13-ish years now. And so because so if to use that as an example, you just, I'm like, okay, Maylin would definitely be in my top 10. And then it would also be like, well, what is the nature or the basis of this relationship? Well, it's not only fruitful because we are building so many amazing things, but because we are truly connected, spiritually in the work that we do every day, and we love each other. And so being able to evaluate relationships in that way, I think really helps you identify relationships that are not fruitful in that way. So if you're finding that you're only talking to certain people when they got some tea to tell you, is it just like,
okay, what's that tea?
Tell me what happened. So tea means gossip, drama. Let me tell you about my child's father, or what happened at work, or is it I need money? Because we all got those calls when they come through, and it's like, oh wow, you haven't called me in a while. Or when you do call me, I'm already anticipating
a request.
Yeah. And so, but if you are upfront with that, you can start to really identify relationships for face value, and not what we maybe have told ourselves these relationships are. Because I think a lot of friendships, or even associations, right? Because I think we have to clearly define.
Yeah, we do.
Not everybody is your friend.
No, I stopped using the word friend.
Yeah, I'm like I know her.
This person.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, oh yeah, they're like, did you know so and so? So like, I've met them, but we're not friends.
Like I don't know her like that. Like I know because I seen her at events, but I cannot vouch. I'm not putting my hand on fire for her. That's what I'm not doing, or him. Right. Because sometimes people are like, oh, but you're friends. It's like, no. And I think Facebook really messed it up. I feel like Facebook should have different titles now. I want to have friends. acquaintance and family members. I want to make sure that when I accept you as a friend, I'm accepting you with a status. Facebook, fix that, okay?
Yeah, I
Because not everybody thinks you're
agree.
my friend.
And it confuses people because I think
Yes.
sometimes you can be hurt because you're more vested in a relationship than the other person is.
Right, or they're more vested in it than you. Because I
Yeah.
find people that I'm trying to introduce myself, right? Because I meet them somewhere and they're like, oh, we're Facebook friends. Oh, wow. Okay, well, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You're right. I think technology has really kind of taken away what we define as actual healthy, interactive, prosperous friendships. And it's like, no, we're all friends. I've got
No.
thousands of friends, but it's like, no, none of these
No.
people really know you.
Yes.
If they're not, and going back to like the original thing about like your top 10 relationships of an order of importance. I can assure you, many of the people that I follow or follow me or vice versa, like they're not going to be in that top 10. It's going to be predominantly like a bulk of my family.
Yeah.
And so it's just thinking through, I think being able to sit with this and really kind of defining what you define as a friendship, defining of what is importance, what is the value of a friendship, how much time and who am I spending my time with each
Yeah.
and every week will really help us eliminate any kind of confusion about who we are or who we rolling with, who's really a part of your
Yes.
journey.
Who's there for you?
Yeah, and it'll highlight the need for change.
Yeah.
If you really are like, listen, I'm trying to get here, but I'm still hanging out with these people who want to go to the club every week or who don't want
Wanna smoke every day.
Yeah, or they just want to drink all day, or they just have this negative mindset about the stuff that I'm building, then what are you going to do to start making those changes so that you're making space and time for the people and the things that really are important to you?
And I think that's, for the longest, I think I have had to tell people, very few people, I'm not going to rock with you no more, right? Like very few people have ever had to hear those words from me because I put it as a prayer, right? Like I always ask God, I'm like, these people are right for me. Like, let them be in my life, right? If there's a reason, a purpose for this, I'm all for it. But if not, bless them and remove them. And I have watched people disappear.
Yeah, every time you start to pray that, I've noticed that too. And when you started doing that, I started doing that. I was like, wow.
It works
It
amazingly.
happens fast though, so don't complain about something you prayed for. We tell you that all the time. If you're like, God, I'm not sure, and then they leave or they disappear, you just like, well, that happened real fast.
Yeah, that was a week. I did that prayer yesterday, and they leaving tomorrow. Okay, got it.
Got it.
And I think sometimes then you start questioning too, like, oh wow, like where are these people? I haven't seen them in a while. You may have forgotten the conversation you had with God about it, right? So for me, it's always a constant reminder. Those are in my life are there because I pray for it. It's the same way when I go to a conference. I pray there's thousands of people here. I'm not gonna be able to meet everybody. Help me meet who I'm supposed to meet.
Right.
So everyone that I meet, like the connection is they're like, oh my God. I'm like, well, I pray for this. So I'm not surprised that we have this energy because that's what I wanted. I didn't want to meet everybody. It's the same thing with Facebook. You have thousands of friends. Can we change it to followers? Like Instagram, I love it. Instagram doesn't call nobody a friend. It's a follower. Like you follow me, I follow you, but we in friends.
It's clear.
They do have a top 100 friends or closest friends or something that you can create like a list that you can actually send them a message if you want to send like a group message or something, or you want to send like individual messages. When you're sharing your story, you can share with a specific group of people if you want to, right? That's great because you create who are my top 100, who are my top out of this number, and that's great. They show up at top 10 like we do, right, guys? But for marketing purposes, I get it. But Facebook is not like that. Facebook is everybody's your friend. And not everybody thinks they're your friend.
Right. They
and
walk
they get
up
mad.
to you. And it's true. I've had people like, well, and I'm like,
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
And so I think it's important that we all start to really be very clear as to what we define as friendships.
Yeah.
And, and also evaluating what are we bringing to these relationships.
Yeah.
What are we bringing to our friendships? What are we bringing? Because it can't constantly be from this place that you are the only person benefiting from these relationships.
Right.
So as you're evaluating your top 10 as far as like level of importance, and then evaluating your top 10 of, how much time are you spending with certain people, and describing the basis of these relationships.
Yeah, the purpose.
Yeah,
right?
the purpose. But it can't just be like
One-sided.
one-sided. So also evaluating yourself and saying like, is there something I need to do
Better.
now that I've identified these are the people I care about, this is who I'm spending my time with, this is, ideally what I would want out of these relationships. Now, what am I doing and what is my piece in that entire relationship process?
Yeah.
So does that mean, could you step up and be calling your sibling more, or can you be intentional about planning date nights for you and your significant other?
Yes.
Or, maybe you book a class for you and your friend to go eat. Or so it's like thinking about, okay, we know that this is important to us,
Yeah.
but what are we giving to continue to make that relationship fruitful?
And it's so funny we're talking about this because I literally started this. So I noticed, I didn't make like a list of my top 10 or this. I like this. I'm going to do that. But I have a board, you know it, the whiteboard where you left a message on my whiteboard in front of my bed. And in there, I literally wrote, I said, okay, there's our people that God forbid something happens to me. I haven't talked to in a while. And I really want to talk to them. I want to make sure that I'm checking on them. So I just wrote names, like 10 names, funny enough, I think. And I put a little dash next to it, a little line. And my goal was like either that week or I make goals for like 1 to 3 weeks. I need to touch base with these people. Is it a text? Is it a call? Is it a visit? Can I see them? And I once I wrote it, it started happening. And I started seeing, like I hadn't seen my siblings in a bit. And literally they show up at my house, right? Like, we're here. I'm like, hi. So, and then me checking it off. And that happened to you too recently where your brother came out of nowhere.
Yeah, he popped up out of nowhere.
Right.
Yeah. I was surprised to see him, but I was happy to see him because I kept thinking to myself, like, I got to go see Jimmy.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, he came.
Yes.
But now I have to, like,
Go see him.
like I plan to go other places, I need to plan to go see Miguel. Because I would do that when my other sister was in California.
Yes.
I was like, okay, when am I going to go see her?
You all did it.
Yeah, we all did it. So, but I know I have not been intentional about that. And my brother's been in Texas for some years now.
Yes. And I think is writing it down because it's not that we don't care.
Yeah.
Which I think why this evaluation and process is important. Just like you're removing people out of your life that are not good for you or they have served their purpose in your life. Then for this time, they probably have to, maybe they'll come back, but for now, they probably should be removed, right? Then now those that are staying, what do we do about it? So I literally made the list and then I check off. So once I contacted them by text, I call or something and I'm like, I did the effort, right? Like, I'm not going to like hunt you down either, right? So if I made the effort and I called you or text you, or try to connect with you, and then you haven't made that effort back, then at least I know I did it,
right?
And I'm good with that,
yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not gonna like continue every week on this, but I did it. Now, when you are able to, then you get back with me. I have friends that from high school that I haven't seen. We don't see each other maybe like once a year, and it's like you always connect where you left off because there's not like, well, you don't call me every day. Like, we just have that. I see you when I see you. If you need me, I'm here, and you know that, right? Like, that's it. That's a cool relationship. I can be friends with people that are like, you haven't done this. I'm like, okay, you don't understand. I'm busy. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I can't. I don't do well with those relationships because I'm busy.
Right.
But I did start making the list, and in my list is my family, some close friends, and I'm like, did I talk to these people? Because sometimes you go and you don't talk to people for months, and you don't want to. It just happens.
It just happens. Yeah. So I think there's power and taking a responsibility, for nurturing and caring for those personal relationships because, we have to be able to acknowledge that some relationships fizzled out and moved on because we weren't investing our time, our energy, our love into where it counts. And so we often talk about the importance of being very intentional and strategic with your time and your energy. You cannot be all things for all people. And it doesn't come from a place of not having empathy or not caring.
Right.
But, you can't be everywhere to where when it's time to show up for those 10 people that you have on your paper, you're so depleted and you're so stressed and overwhelmed by all of this other stuff that you clearly have defined that is not priority to you. You have allowed those people in those situations to deplete you to where now you can't be intentional about that for the people that you have identified as a top priority. So I think it's just, as we learn and as we grow and as we outgrow people, or people outgrow us.
They do.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Do.
Don't be salty if somebody just stops rocking with you. That's AKA don't be upset if somebody stops hanging out with you. You don't know their journey. You don't
Right.
know where they're headed. You don't know what they're going through.
Right.
Because I had this ego complex about that. Like, well, why she don't want to talk to me? I didn't do nothing to her. And it's like, it don't have nothing to do with me.
No.
This is her own journey, his own journey that they're going through, that maybe there's something about me and how I move and operate that might be a hindrance
Yeah.
to where they are and where they want to go. So we have to stop, building
take it
relationships.
personal.
Yes, stop building relationships based on ego. Because if somebody decides that you're no longer on their top 5, I've unfollowed people on social media and have gotten messages like, "Why you stop following me?"
Because your
And it's
message.
just like, because you post negative stuff all the time. Right. And so if you decide to unfollow me, first of all, I probably won't notice, but second of all, because I am not so involved in fake relationships.
Right,
So it's not from a
right.
cocky standpoint because I got all these followers. I think my daughter got more followers than me, but it's because I realize that those platforms are tools.
Yeah.
They are not real relationships.
They're not.
So, I'm able to see my friends in different parts of the world, and I've watched their children grow up online. But at the end of the day, that's not a real, it's love if I see them,
Yeah.
but it's not a priority.
And it's a tool that you can use to build relationships,
Yeah.
though, right? Because you can see what's going on. If whatever they choose to share,
Right.
then you can comment, call them based on that, and congratulate them. Like you can build off that.
Absolutely.
But it's not absolutely the way that you can create a relationship. It's a tool
Absolutely.
used for that.
Absolutely. And we have to be very clear
Yeah.
that social media is a tool.
Yeah.
It does not clearly define your relationships. It's not always enough as to how you're checking in with people. Like, you can like pictures, but have you called that person?
Yes.
Have you texted that person? Did you send them a card in the mail? Like, if people are a priority to you, you got to make that known. You got to make sure that people feel that. Because when you start to pull back and you're not receiving the same energy you were giving, it tells you real quick who's really rocking with you and who's not. And I think that sometimes is the hardest thing to fully understand. Like, wow, I haven't called this person. This person hasn't called me. Don't be upset about that.
Yeah.
Just as you said earlier, it's like, okay, like, I'm gonna bless that and I'm gonna release it. It was part of my journey in that moment, and I'm grateful for the moments. If it was a positive experience, if it was negative,
I'm grateful for the lesson.
thank you for the lessons, but I'm cool. I don't ever want to learn that again.
Right.
Or it's also because sometimes we find ourselves in the same types of relationships because we're not learning.
The lesson.
We're not learning the lessons. We're not looking at the signs.
We're not healing.
No, we're not healing. We're looking at, I just want this. And it's like, yeah, but in order to have this, there are certain ingredients that both people, it's not just relationships, it's also in business. Like, we talk about the power and, really building relationships. That trickles into people's businesses. You can't just contact people when you want them to buy something. You can't just contact people when you want them to give you a referral.
Or a reference.
Or a reference. Or, I constantly get calls from people about like, oh, can you do this and this?
I haven't talked to you in 5 years. You want me to do what?
Yeah, I can't. I don't know what you're doing. I'm not going to go out here telling this job to hire you, and I don't know if you're going to show up for work. And so it's just like, we have to be very, very clear. Like, how often are you just having coffee with people? Hey, you're not on my top 10, but you're an integral part of my business.
Right.
I haven't touched base. You've given me a lot of referrals in the past. Can I take you to breakfast? I just want to check in with you.
And you're really good with that, though. Like that, I do admire that about you. I think I learned from you. I'm like, okay, she's out here like getting flowers and things. Like, I can even, like the first time I saw you doing those things, that I pay attention, because I think you always do it, but I pay attention. I was like, how did she just know? Because you would show up at my house like at the craziest time with flowers. And I'm like, who told you? Like, I was having a bad day. Or who told you this was happening? And then I started wondering, like, who's doing that for her? Because you do this like with our donors. You do this with like people that mentor you. You're really good about making people feel love, right? And appreciated. And many times I'm like, damn, people doing this for her because she does this for so many people.
It's, it's weird because it's always like a spirit thing. Like, I will randomly think about people out the blue, and I'm like, I got it. Like, there's actually 2 people that I have to send something to in the next week. Like, I have to. And I don't even really talk to these people. But something occurred that I noticed, and I'm like, it's probably a rough time. Because it's just you want to be able to have authentic engagements with people, even if I don't do business with you, even if you don't ever write us a check, even if you didn't vote for me or you don't follow the podcast. I just think when it circles back to who you are at your core, it doesn't have to be like this
Then a
big
transaction.
transaction for you to be like, I'm gonna send Maylin flowers.
Yeah,
or,
thank you. She's really nice, guys.
which I always
She's
say
the
it's
best
been a little
gifts. The
while.
best gifts. Like I'm hashtag lucky as heck. Okay.
Because it's just something that I always feel like you want to be able to, whether they're priority relationships to you or not, if you have the ability just to say, okay, I'm gonna take, I got a little extra change. I'm going to send somebody some flowers, or I'm going to spend the first 20 minutes of my day just texting people, thinking about you. Hope you're having a great day. That doesn't cost you anything but a moment in time to let somebody else know that you thought about them.
Yeah.
I may never really speak to you, but for me, it's something that I constantly just end up having like some kind of intuition about that. I'm like, all right, I got to act on this.
You have to. And I have the same thing. I think it's a little, sometimes I thought at first it was crazy because I'm like, you want me to do what? Like, for who?
Especially people that like people you really don't like. Okay, so that's a whole different conversation. But if there are people you don't, because it's easy, it's easy to be nice to nice people.
Yeah.
It's easy to be nice to people who like you.
Yeah.
But to show grace and to be to show empathy
and
to
love.
people who have been dismissive or have wronged you, and really just be at a place like, you know what? I'm still going to show you.
Yeah, I'm still going to bless you.
I'm going to still bless you. I'm going to still say hi. I'm going to still send my condolences. We're not going to be friends. We're not going to go hang out.
But I respect you and I want God to bless you. Like, and I think that shocks people though. I have seen it where people are like, what?
They be like, wow. You just came in here, and I was like, yeah, I called you after that one. I was like, I even a little hug exchange. I had to dig deep for that, boy. I was like, you play scenarios in your mind so much. You're like, oh, when I see this person, and then you're in that moment, and you're like, all right, I serve a higher calling. I'm just gonna say hello, and I'm gonna let whatever's gonna happen to you happen, but I'm not gonna allow people, and sometimes I get that wrong because there's still elements of growth.
We're human.
That I'm like, nah, you can't get a pass.
You're getting checked.
Somebody, you have to get checked. But that's not how I want to live my life. No. And I work hard to be mindful of that. And so as we're kind of wrapping up today's episode, like, we just want to make sure that you're thinking about that relationship, inventory, kind of like a tune-up, as you get like a tune-up for your car, or oil change. I actually think I need an oil change too. But like, thinking about like those inventory check-ins about like, who am I hanging out with? Am I hanging out with the people I need to hang around? Have I made sure that the people who matter to me know that they matter to me? And if you haven't, that's okay. Like, today's a new day, tomorrow's a new day. Just take the time, create the list that we've described for you today, and just start to create little, habits to just making that more of your everyday routine.
Yeah. And then maybe maybe one person a week, maybe one person a day. Like, it doesn't have to be 20 people in one day. Because, so if you don't have the time, it's okay. But schedule it in. Just like you'll watch Netflix and chill for like ever, you could take a couple minutes to reach out to somebody you love. Because life is precious and it's so fragile. Right? Like, it's so fragile. And I really, when it puts in my heart to reach out to somebody, I do it. I didn't used to do that like often. I didn't listen, but I do it more often now. And it's incredible because those people, when you send them a message like, hey, how are you? They're like shocked sometimes, but they're so grateful because we don't know what they're going through.
Right.
And your message could have been that thing that they needed to give them hope that day.
Yeah.
That somebody cares. So listen to that. Like, you have it. So I think once you create the list, if you start paying attention to your intuition, you're going to start getting those nudges, right? Those little pushes to do something for someone. And make sure that you do that. I think when you do that, you have no regrets. Schedule it because we get busy and life happens and you forget.
Yeah.
So that's why I have it on my board. I wake up every morning, I'm like, okay, who I need still to check with? And I check, and I have a lot of check marks. So I'm feeling really good about this. And now I'm like, okay, I check on those 10. Who are my next 10? Like, who are the next 10 people that I need to check on, check in this month or next month? And just create a list. And at least by the end of the year, you may have talked to 30 people that you otherwise would not have because you're so busy. So that's my advice. But I love this. I think I'm going to definitely create my list because I feel like I did my list, but I want to make sure my list is right. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I need to do my list too. because I think it's just a way for us to really make sure that we're investing our love, time, and energy where it counts, that we're not all over the place. And oftentimes we talk about just the non-negotiables, and I think that could also be something you pair with this after you've kind of identified the top people and kind of how you want to spend your time. But how does that tie into your non-negotiables? Just like things that are really priority to you, kind of how you want to move and operate both professionally and personally. Because, like Maylin said, you get busy and you start to slip in ways that you're like, man, how did I get here? How am I at this club on a Tuesday? Like, because you just so
not in Ohio, guys, because that doesn't happen. There's no really cool club here that I know of. If I'm wrong, tell me in the comments. But I feel like if you're in another city or state, maybe, but Ohio,
no. It's gotta be a real reason. Even when you're out on vacation, because it's funny, I get tired.
She does.
I go to bed at like 9:30, 10 o'clock. Like,
she does not. I have to go by myself.
I can't do it. And we were out on vacation, and I had to have a conversation with myself because my family was all here. We were having a good time, and it's like, you can stay up a little late just to hang out with them, because
like 10 or 11.
Yeah. Because I'm like, I don't want, I felt like, okay, like, yes, your routine is this, but their priority, we're having a great time. This is like a memorable moment. I'm going to push through.
Yes. And keep that energy when we go on vacation. Keep that energy, okay?
Okay, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us today. As we always say, it's definitely about progress, not perfection. And as you're getting ready for, just whether it be the fourth quarter, new year, kind of whenever you listen to this, this is the reminder. There's no accident that you heard this conversation today. So don't ever feel like you have to wait to a new year or something major to happen before you start doing inventory or making new goals or setting new ambitions for yourself. Because the reality is every day you're living your life. Either you are or you aren't. And that's something you have to define. But it really starts with the mindset piece of what you deserve, what you were created to do, knowing that you are enough, but understanding that the people you hang around and the things that you allow exposure to you do play a part in ultimately how you get there.
Yeah, who do what you allow in your life is very important.
Absolutely.
Not everybody gets to get access.
Yeah, do a background check. Ask for reference. You can't be my friend until I know some things, because you have to be able to trust people, and I have a problem with that. So I have no new applications.
She's not accepting applications right now.
I'm not accepting applications right now, but we can be acquaintances.
We'll let you know when she opens it. They'll be open into the new year, maybe.
Yes, maybe so.
I love this. Oh, my God. As we always say, thank you so much for tuning in. Follow us. Make sure that you comment. If you want to be in the podcast, please let us know. We'd love to have you. I think we'd love to hear your story. And if you have topics or questions, send those to us. We would love to make sure that we answer your questions in one of our future episodes. We love doing that. We love getting your questions.
And share this episode if you have somebody in mind that you're like, this would be really good for them. Don't ever hesitate to share things that inspire you, tools that you would find helpful. So make sure you share this on your social media. Make sure you share it with your close friends, because I think we're all kind of in this place of growth and opportunities for growth.
Yeah. So we'll see you next time. And like we always say,
it's bigger than you.
Thank you so much for listening today. We're excited, and we hope that you follow us on
Instagram, True Print for Life, YouTube channel, also True Print for Life. And make sure that you share, like, watch our videos. Make sure that you follow us on all streaming platforms.